United Church of Christ. We are very happy that you've come to worship with us. You will be extra happy that you've come to worship with us because we have a guest with us, Reverend Jim Longsworth. Jim, you want to stand and give a little wave here? Just a little bio that Jim sent me, but I wanted to add to that. He's a big Beatles fan and big Bruce Springsteen fan. And so if you know any tunes, you can sing it to him instead of shaking his hand or hugging him. You can sing it to him. I also have it on good authority that he is a regular flosser. So that is an excellent, we love him already. And we hope that that will spread to all. A couple of announcements that are in your bulletin. The puppy chow will be for sale. It'll be the last day that that will be for sale. It's $2.50 a bag. And so we hope you will support Women's Fellowship. It's your last chance to get it. Also, if you order Girl Scout cookies from Matilda, no longer Tilly, she wants to go by Matilda now, Sikorski, we are making arrangements that those can be picked up at the church during the week, and if you owe money, I will collect your money and we'll do it that way instead of them coming to church. Because, bet you never thought you'd have to give up church for Lent. For the next 2 weeks at least, probably most likely, so March 22nd and March 29th, just open your bulletin, take your pencil, and just cross that off. The church is not going to hold in-person worship services. There is going to be a staff and executive team meeting following the worship service to plan our next steps. Please watch your email. If you don't have email, you can call the church, but not every day, and not more than once a day. But we will keep you informed, and that will be our way of communicating with you, because we still want to be connected as much as we can be during these crazy times. I've never seen anything like it in my lifetime, which is long and storied, and I'm sure that none of you have seen anything like this either, but if we stick together, at least in spirit, and we'll get through this. So please watch your emails for information. Also, Amanda Hawk Marshall would like you to know that I don't think she has any customers, but she is sanitizing the nursery top to bottom even as we speak. And the church has undergone extra cleaning and extra sanitation. But as you see, there's hand sanitizer, hand washing stations available. So while we're here together, and of course we know the curtsy, bow, and hip bump policy is still in effect. So please, please, please stay connected. You can check our Facebook page, and we will be most likely having some services that you can watch online. Does anyone else have any announcements before I welcome our visitors? All right, Linda P?
Can we still send in our pledge money during
Oh,
this time while you're closed?
what a delightful question, Linda Blaine. I know I'm speaking to the choir, literally, but the church's bills will continue, even though we are not here. You can give online through our website. You can mail in a check. You can drop off money or a check to the church office. I will be here every day. So please keep us in your mind as well as in your prayers and in your checkbook. If you are a first-time visitor here to our church today, before we go on hiatus, and you'd like to introduce yourself, John Toth, you are not new.
No, I'm going to introduce our visitors. We have Bobby and Wayne Cook.
Hello, Bobby.
First-time visitors here today.
And
We have Karen and Caitlin Thomas, who are and Jan's been here before, but they're all my friends.
Seeing no further announcements, and we welcome each and every one of you here. Let's continue with our worship.
Once there was a way to get back home. Once there was a way to get back home. Sleep, pretty darling, do not cry. And I will sing a lullaby. Go Once there was a way to get back home. Once there was a way to get back home. Sleep, pretty darling, tonight, and I will sing a lullaby.
Good morning, everyone. Irene was saying that she doesn't remember anything like this happening in her lifetime. Well, let me tell you, I probably have close to twice her lifetime, and I haven't seen anything either. It's kind of scary. However, we will get through it. We come, for God gathers us here with that community called faith. We come, for God welcomes us here into the home called grace. We come, for God reunites us, sisters and brothers, in that family called love.
Jesus is called.
if there are joys and concerns to be shared, and I think there's a mic that will be brought around, if you would like to share any of those, we will lift them up. Thomas? By the way, Tom, thank you for singing that. I thought I was listening to a vinyl, recording of McCartney doing that. That was just great. Thank you for your willingness to do that. And wait, before you start, if you would do that again as the benediction, would you be willing to do that? You could do that again. Sure. We'll have that as the benediction.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
Just the joy that my whole family is home.
Most of the time, that's a joy. Yes, it is.
I do want to pray for Jim Joyce. He's here today, but he has a CAT scan scheduled for his knee and to see further steps. So I won't be able to update you in the future, so just pray for Jim and me for taking care of him.
Yeah.
Our friend Joyce Scott is going through radiation for her brain. They found a tumor that had come back in her brain and they need to take care of that.
We will lift her in our prayers. Thank you. I have a joy to share. It has been a joy to work with Irene on the telephone and Tom with his wanting to do the Beatles song, Appreciate, and Heidi for her support this morning, and Mary Ellen for being our liturgist. I know some of you folks from our days at First Church or University Circle in Cleveland, so I have a familiarity. In fact, Heidi and I got to know each other there when she was a pastor, and I was one of her parishioners at those times. So it's been a joy to work with you all. Thank you. Any other prayers or concerns? Thank you. Let's pray. Eternal God, we know that it is as if we are held in the hollow of your hand. In spite of the difficulty and all the anxiety of these days, we believe that our life and our times are in your keeping. The flight of a sparrow and the destiny of any one of us are within your concern. You are the source of all that exists, the power beyond all powers, and still you come to us in love. How beyond our understanding that you should care about this small planet, that you would know us by name and give us your Son. Grant us the grace, O God, to comprehend the enormity of this gift, that we may give evidence of our gratitude by living lives of service and sacrifice. As with the compassion of Christ, look upon our needs, Lord, especially in these days when there is so much uncertainty and we are not sure about many things. Enable the sick, some of them who we have mentioned here this morning, others we name in our hearts. Enable the sick to receive the healing that is your intention for their lives, and strength of spirit sufficient for the problems that they face. Comfort the bereaved, counsel the confused, and look not in judgment, but in concern upon those of this age of human achievement who have lost their faith. Lord, consider our continuing needs for love and learning and purpose. Instill within us the desire to help others without destroying their hope to help themselves. Undergird undergird this your church with new power. Defend her from those aggressive outsiders who would rejoice over her death, as well as from indifferent insiders who would kill her more surely by ignoring her. Calm the nervousness and anxiety of our world by giving sense to our leaders. Be the guide of the president of this nation, the governor of our state, and all those who have responsibility and authority. And preserve within us a lively hope, that throughout this earthly journey we may be confident of the coming of your kingdom here among us, as well as the eternal home promised by your Son, our Savior Jesus Christ, who lives with you in the Spirit, and who taught us to pray, saying together, Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory forever. Amen.
When Jesus wept the falling tear, in Jesus wept the falling tears, when Jesus wept the falling tears, when Jesus wept the
I'm not Mary Densmore. And if you don't know who I am by now, I'm sorry. We don't have any children this morning, but it occurred to me as I was sitting back there, all the kids are out of school, and maybe at some point this week, the parents will say, sit down here, we need to go to church. And so, I thought, since what I was going to talk about anyway, we can probably all relate to, we're going to have a children's moment anyway. So Jim is going to preach in a little while about the prodigal son, and I'm curious if any of you, when you were little or not so little, ever ran away from home. Liz, what happened when you ran away from home?
I was not agreeing with my parents, and I probably was in my 20s.
In her 20s.
Yes.
But you came home again.
Yes.
Greg, what about you? I saw that hand back there.
I told my mother I was going to run away from home.
you. I think that would have been my mother. Sure, see you at dinner. Mike, what happened for you?
Well, my mother packed me a peanut butter sandwich and I adjourned to the backyard for all of about a half an hour.
Was somebody up here, Dawn?
I got to the corner and I had to come home because I wasn't allowed to cross the street.
Across the street, that's a real clicker right there. Chuck, did you tell me you ran away from home once?
Yeah, I ran away back into the woods and had an apple. I don't know what kind of, I think it was a rabbit. And I was back in the house. That was it.
So, go ahead, Lynn.
I didn't run away, but my brother and sister would, and they would go up the street to a woman's house that lived up the street. And my mom would call and say, well, are they there? And I said, yeah, they're there. She said, well, when they're done with their milk and cookies, can you send them home?
Judy?
I was in my 20s. I was divorced with 3 small children. They weren't behaving. I says, that's it, I'm leaving. I went out and I got in the car, backed out so they could see the car going, but I backed into the garage and closed the garage and sat there for a half an hour.
Go ahead,
They
Bobby.
were good when I got in.
They were probably terrified.
I was whatever, 10, I don't know. And my mother picked me things. How did it say? Yeah.
Packed your bag for you.
Went around the block.
Such compassionate mothers. Bob, what about you?
I ran away across the street to my aunt and uncle's. And my mother said, they're not gonna keep you over there. Why did I go?
There you go. It's kind of the way it tends to work out. Irene?
I left home with twins were 2 years old. I took the bus to downtown, took the Greyhound, and went to California, and didn't come back for 9 weeks.
Oh my goodness. That's a little more of a prodigal journey. There's a children's book, and I think I read it to the kids once. It's called The Runaway Bunny. And the little bunny says, I'm going to run away. And the mom says, well, wherever you go, I will be there for you. You know, and he goes up the mountain, and the mother says, well, I will be, you know, the clouds surrounding you on the mountain. And finally, at the end of the book, the bunny says, there's just nowhere I can go to get away from you. And mom says, you might as well have some carrots and stay here. And I think that's kind of the way it tends to work out for us. We think we're going to run away, and then we get out there, and it's just not what it was cracked up to be. And so it is with God. We can turn away. We can take that break we need, whether it's for a month, a year, half a lifetime. But when we come to our senses and realize that there's nowhere to go, that's when God is still right there and says, welcome home. It is good to see you, and what the heck took you so long? So, you know, as you're going through these times and these weeks ahead where there's a lot of uncertainty, remember when you're ready to turn around, God is right there and ready to hug you and carry you and in the palm of his hand through whatever comes next. So let's pray. God, we are grateful for your presence in our lives, and that in all things you are almighty and all-powerful. Guide us in wisdom, guide us in hope, bring comfort to our hearts, and remind us to wash our hands. In your name we pray. Amen.
In all times and places, the ministries of the church are needed, especially in these days. So I would invite our ushers to receive our gifts and offerings.
Bye.
Dear Lord, as a nation, as a community, as a people, we have been blessed. Help us to use these our gifts, to be in ministry and mission to all in need. Amen.
A reading from the Bible, Luke 15:11 through 24. The parable of the prodigal and his brother. Then Jesus said, there was a man who had 2 sons. The younger of them said to his father, Father, give me my share of the property that will belong to me. So he divided the property between them. A few days later, the younger son gathered all he had and traveled to a distant country, and there he squandered his property in desolate living. When he had spent everything, a severe famine took place throughout the country, and he began to be in need. So he went and hired himself out to one of the citizens of that country, who sent him in his field to feed the pigs. He would gladly have filled himself with the pods that the pigs were eating, and no one gave him anything. But when he came to himself and said, how many of my father's hired hands have bread enough even to spare, but here I am dying of hunger. I will get up and go to my father, and I will say to him, Father, I have sinned against heaven and before you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son. Treat me like one of your hired hands. So he set off and went to his father. But while he was still far off, his father saw him and was filled with compassion. He ran and put his arms around him and kissed him. Then the son said to him, Father, I am not worthy to be called your son. But the father said to his slaves, quickly, bring a robe, the best one, and put it on him, and a ring on his finger and sandals on his feet, and get that fatted calf and kill it, and let us eat and celebrate. For this son of mine was dead and is alive again. He was lost and is found, and they began to celebrate.
Thanks, Mary Ellen, for reading that wonderful story from Luke. I did want to tell you that I do not currently have the coronavirus that I know of anyway. So far, so good. But if you've gotten close to me, you might think I have leprosy, because I went to my dermatologist on Thursday, and some of you who are my age or my complexion have probably experienced that little cotton swab that they put in liquid nitrogen, and then they touch, all those places on you. So I have a number. I apologize for that, but she said it was necessary. I accused her of being a sadist, my dermatologist, that she enjoyed inflicting pain, and she said, well, no, really, you should see this as part of your Lenten experience, You're suffering a little bit, so it's really pretty minor, but important. A long, long time ago, during the fall semester of 1970, when I was a seminary student at Perkins School of Theology in Dallas, one of my classes that I was taking was entitled Pastoral Care and Counseling. I'm sure Heidi has had such a class. It was taught by Professor David Switzer. And at the end of class one day, Dr. Switzer indicated that he wanted to talk to me, which is usually never a good sign. But as it turned out, he was wanting some information about rock and roll music. And since I looked and acted very much like a secular kind of seminary student, that is, long hair and a rebellious attitude, he thought that I might know something about rock music. He said he was writing an article for a professional journal on the subject of the generation gap, as we called it back then, which had to do with the estrangement of young people from their parents. They're getting separated from their homes, the sense that they were a lost generation. So Dr. Switzer was asking me, somebody who looked pretty lost, I guess, if I knew of any popular songs with that kind of theme, being alienated, then wanting to get back home. And I told Dr. Switzer, I said, on the Beatles' Abbey Road album, there is a Lennon-McCartney song entitled Golden Slumbers that begins with, once there was a way to get back homeward, once there was a way to get back home. And then I said, Dr. Switzer, before you write your article, you might want to listen to that song. He agreed. Now, whether you were a youth back in the late 1960s, struggling to find your identity, as I was, or you are one of today's millennials who is trying to find a work-life balance in this hyper-kinetic digital world, regardless of what's caused your anxiety, the beauty of this Lennon-McCartney song, which is a lullaby, by the way, the peacefulness of this song has a way of transcending all of that. Once there was a way to get back homeward, once there was a way to get back home. Which incidentally is what today's sermon is about. It's about being lost and finding one's way back home. This Beatles song says, once there was a way to get back home, suggesting that maybe the chance to get back home has passed us by, that there's no way to get back, time has moved on, and that really you can't go home again. But I don't think so. I believe God's love and grace still abounds, and when we're lost, there's always a way, always a possibility of getting back home. In his poem entitled Death of the In his poem Death of the Hired Man, Robert Frost wrote this: home is the place where, when you have to go there, they have to take you in. Let me read that again. Home is the place where, when you have to go there, they have to take you in. Some of the stories we heard just a moment ago in Heidi's children's about running away from home, they did have to take you back, pretty much. And that's a very kind of bare bones definition of home, but it does speak to the truth that when we're lost, home is the place we want to get back to. We want to get back to a familiar place that's safe and secure, a place that we are known and accepted, loved. We all need to live and work out of some kind of comfortable, trusted, secure place. It might not be a house or even an apartment. There might not even be a family there in the traditional sense of what we mean by family. But all of us need a home base of some kind, a place, some place where we belong to be, where we long to be, and with people we feel comfortable with. Let me repeat that. All of us need a home base of some kind, a place, some place where we long to be, and with people with whom we feel we belong. In this sense, then, we all want to be back home. And of course, there are all kinds of ways of leaving home, all kinds of ways to get lost. The prodigal son chose to leave home rebelliously, severing his ties with his family, taking his inheritance with him, we're told. His older brother says that he went to a distant country, someplace with a reputation like maybe Las Vegas or Tijuana, where he squandered his inherited money in riotous living and running with prostitutes. Pretty nasty stuff. And when he ran out of money, he was feeding pigs and eating from the trough. He was so low that I think everything was looking up to him. So eventually he decided to eat crow and go back home to be a servant in his father's employment. I mean, we could get lost that way, the way the prodigal son did. Maybe do a little riotous living, running around with people of ill repute. We could try that. Some of us have. But more likely today, people get lost in things like alcohol or drug dependency. They waste their lives chasing some kind of addiction. Or there are ways to just as easily be spiritually lost. I mean, we could be unemployed, drifting without purpose or incentive, or we could be retired with no commitment, no goals. We could be spiritually lost by being bored with life, pursuing trivial interests, obsessed by consumerism. We could be lost when we're grieving the loss of a loved one, or we could be suffering from ill health, or even the fear and anxiety of this coronavirus. We could be lost. We could have experienced the breakup of a serious relationship, or we could be alienated from our family, our parents, our siblings, our children. In today's world, there are all kinds of problems in living that can cause us to feel alienated and alone, lost and separated from home. Homeless, really. It's even possible for us to get physically lost. I mean, that doesn't happen very often anymore, I don't think, because of today's cell phones and GPS systems, but it's possible for us to be physically lost, to not know where home is or how to get back there. Have you seen that 2017 film entitled Lion? It's based on a biography written entitled A Long Way Home, written by Saru Byerly. It's a true story, the true story of his life. The film begins in 1986 in central India in the city of Kandwa. Saru is a 5-year-old child of a poor but happy rural family. On a trip with his older brother, Saru becomes separated from his older brother, and he soon finds himself alone and trapped in a moving, decommissioned passenger train that takes him far, far away to Calcutta, 900 miles east of his home and his family. He is now totally lost in this city of 15 million people, too young to identify either himself or his home to the authorities. Saru struggles to survive as a street child until he is sent to an orphanage. Soon he's selected for adoption by the Byerly family of Tasmania, which is an island state of Australia, where he grows up in a loving, prosperous home 6,000 miles from his native India. And then we skip ahead 24 years in this film. It's now 2008, and Saru is now 29 years old, having grown up in Hobart, Tasmania, about to begin taking a course in hotel management at the University of Melbourne. He becomes involved with one of the other students, Lucy, and he begins to tell her of his flashbacks of growing up as a child in India. At a party that he attends, he tells a group of fellow students that he often thinks of his mother, his brother, his sister, and he wishes that he could find them. Someone suggests that he research how fast passenger trains traveled back then, and then estimate how many hours he was on the train to create a search radius. Another girl at the party tells Saru about a new website, Google Earth. That website allows users to search the world through satellite images. Saru does the math and calculates how many miles from Calcutta his home might be, which allows him to draw a circle on the map of the possible locations that he should be searching. His search on the website Google Earth is a long and frustrating process. For 2 years, he searches the satellite images, looking at thousands of aerial photographs, hoping to identify a landmark that might give him a clue. Finally, on his computer screen, he recognizes a hillside and a river, then a train station and a water tower behind it. This leads him to the village that he used to run home to every day when he was 5 years old. It's a suburb called Kanesh Tali. He travels there, hoping to find his mother, sister, and brother, even though it's been 25 years since last he saw them. There is a dramatic scene at the end of the film. It's a reunion. Saru has found his way back home. He rejoins his family, embraces his mother, and whispers in her ear, "I'm here. I'm here." It's a wonderful story and a great film. I encourage you to see it if you haven't already. I know the library has DVD copies of it. Unfortunately, the library is closed presently. But just write that down, Brian, you know. If you haven't seen it, it's just a wonderful story. Watching the film, and I just saw it again for the second or third time, it got me to thinking, to wondering, when we get lost, whether in the physical sense or more likely in the spiritual sense and an emotional way, when we get lost, who or what is the Google Earth site that helps us recognize the landmarks? And is there a map that will enable us to find our way back home? Where's the road? And who are the people that will show us the way to get back homeward? There was a time in my life when I was really feeling lost. It was many, many years ago. It was during my second year in seminary. I wasn't interested in my studies back then. Most of my professors were uncaring academicians. I had broken up with a couple of girlfriends that year. The Vietnam War was raging. The draft was hanging over me. This was 1969, the summer of Woodstock. The social and political climate in America was even more toxic than it is now. I was feeling so lost, so low. It was like I was right there with the prodigal son, feeding out of the pig trough of life. I was on the verge of dropping out of seminary when a friend of mine, a fellow student, Dougal Stewart, insisted that during that summer I enroll in a unit of CPE, which is Clinical Pastoral Education, at a place called the Institute of Religion in Houston, Texas. Fortunately, I took Dougal's advice, and I worked that summer as a hospital chaplain at Methodist Hospital in Houston. It was so good for me to be there that I extended my stay. I was a chaplain intern for a whole year there. My supervisors were Roland Rainwater and Stan Hogel, and unlike my seminary professors who remained distant and detached from their students, Roland and Stan were mentors to us. They took us seriously, they listened, they genuinely cared, they worked with us to resolve our struggles. It was also about this time that I met the woman who would later become my wife, Maria. She was a nurse at Methodist Hospital where I was working as a chaplain. Maria is a kind person, full of grace and nurture, which I needed. And as I got to know her, I discovered those supportive qualities in her. Her love and care for me was a part of my finding my way back home. So it all came together for me in that place in Houston. With all of those forgiving, loving people, I was able to find my way back home. And I was saved, really, saved. And you know, I believe that's always how we get saved. It is the way we find our way back home. It's when friends and family care for us. It's when we become part of institutions that are based on principles of integrity and compassion. Some of these caring people and places are religious. They talk openly about doing their saving work in the name of Christ. And then there are some institutions which are not religious, they're secular, and yet they're still doing the work of God. Like it might be an Alcoholics Anonymous group that helps us find our way home, or maybe it's a marriage counselor, or a pastor, or a teacher, a physician, a close friend, a rehab center, a church. Of course, we have to be receptive and attentive to the working of God's Spirit through these caring people and institutions, because if we aren't receptive, we're going to miss it. God is always surprising us. God is forever working through all kinds of unexpected places and people. You never know. We find our way back home in institutions just like this, in places like Strongsville United Church of Christ, in congregations just like this, among people just like you. That's how we're saved. That's how we find our way back home. And finally, the story that Jesus told, this parable of the prodigal son that Mary Ellen read to us. Jesus told this story so that we would know that like that younger son, we too have a loving parent, a loving God, who is always ready to love us, always ready to forgive us, always ready to embrace and welcome us back home. He's always there to save us. In all kinds of places, in places like this, among people like you, where the Spirit of God is alive and well, we find a way to get back homeward. We find a way to get back home. And then we're saved. We're saved. Amen. Our closing hymn is number 488, Just As I Am. And as I invited Tom earlier, if he would bless us once again with the beautiful song as a benediction. Thank you. 488.
Amen.
once there was a way to get back home. Sleep with it, darling, do not cry. I will sing a lullaby.
You gotta still be a refreshment. Pastry and everything. Same with everything. I saw your little thing. They had it on the calendar, right? Last Sunday, Barbara, we went to
Executive team will meet in the parlor.
Rhinestone. But the lady